Hey, Shalom, it's Izzy here with Holy Language Institute at holylanguage.com. I just finished filming my second last lesson, looking through the first of the 6 orders of the Mishnah. It's in our Mishnah Snapshots series. If you're not familiar with the Mishnah, we do have an introduction to it on our website at holylanguage.com. But basically, the Mishnah is all of the earliest Jewish interpretations of the Torah. They were communicated for quite a while, just word of mouth, generationally, and then they were finally written down in the mid to late 100s. And I love the Mishnah because it comes from the same world as the New Testament, the Second Temple era Jewish world. So this is the world of Jesus and his apostles. And it really, like, there's some things in the Mishnah that can help us to understand the New Testament better, and then also give us really personal glimpses of Rabbi Yeshua from Nazareth and his early movement. And I wanted to give you a little example here. I'm going to give you one takeaway from the lesson. So this is in the Tractate of Orla. It's dedicated to technical questions about a law in the Torah about how the fruit of trees would be forbidden. They would be Orla for the first 3 years, and then in the 4th year, they have some special status, and then the tree goes into normative production. It's really interesting. If you're serious about Torah study, I highly recommend that you eventually begin looking at the Mishnah, because this is how the mitzvot, the commandments in the Torah, are actually interpreted and implied by the people that God gave the Torah to, the Jewish people. It's really interesting. The Torah gives just a very rough framework and just some very basic instructions, and then really you do need to flesh those out if you want to be Torah observant. So it's interesting seeing how the people of Israel have fleshed out the Torah, so to speak, historically, and the Mishnah is great for that. All right, so I want to show you something here. Orla chapter 2 verse 4. It says whatsoever leavens or flavors. I want to show you that Hebrew word for flavors because it gives us an understanding of one of the teachings of Yeshua of Nazareth and some wordplay that he was using in his teaching. All right, so here it says kol al ha-mechametz. So if you're familiar with the festival of unleavened bread, in Hebrew, that's Chag HaMatzot. And actually, as I'm filming this, it is Chag HaMatzot. So at the beginning of the festival of unleavened bread, before it begins, you clean all the chametz out of your house. So that's that word. Maybe you've heard of chametz. Here's that word. And don't worry, we're not going to read too much Hebrew, so don't go anywhere. I just wanted to show you a couple words because I love the language. And it's kind of cool how it even reads from right to left. Kol ha-mechametz. So everything that chametz is, that leavens. And then here's our word I actually want to look at with you. V'ha mitabel. All right, so everything that tavals, the word there is spelled with the three letters tav, bet, or vet, as depending on how it's used, and then lamed, taval. So this verb here, taval, it means to flavor, and you'll see in the footnotes here it mentions with spices. So it flavors with spices. So it has the sense of spicing. I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico, as I'm filming this. And this is a very spicy state. The big question is red or green chili. So very applicable, especially here. Anyways, here's a page from Jastro's dictionary of Hebrew, and let's just have a quick look at this word here. So taval mentions to mix, to spice, or to season. Now I want you to take note of this meaning to mix because this is interesting also. It's kind of the opposite meaning. All right, so having looked at taval, I want to look with you at a cognate word. Cognate means related. So this is a really closely related word, but the interesting thing is it means the exact opposite. So taval means to flavor in the sense of spicing, all right? Here we have tafel, and it actually means the exact opposite. It has the sense of tasteless matter, insipid, not salted. All right. So why is this interesting? It's interesting because taval and tafal are spelled almost exactly the same except for the middle letter. It's either the v sound or the f sound. Now linguistically, these are very, very closely related letters. They're almost exactly the same. And they belong to the same little family of sounds, so to speak. So it's interesting that these two letters, they sound, they're very closely related, but in this word, it actually, it has two different meanings, very opposite meanings. Now, why am I mentioning all of this? Because Yeshua talked about being a flavorful person. The rabbi from Nazareth, he talked about being spicy, so to speak, or losing your flavor. And let's have a look at that here. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 14, we read this teaching. Salt is good, But if even the salt has become what? Tasteless, with what will it be seasoned? Isn't this interesting? Now, I understand that we have the Bible in English, and it was translated from the New Testament was translated from the Greek, and and that's what we have in Western Christianity. At the same time, Eastern Christians have always read the New Testament in Aramaic, which is very closely related to Hebrew. And it's generally understood that in the time of Yeshua, Hebrew and Aramaic were both spoken as living languages. Sometimes there was some overlap there; they were kind of mixed up together a little bit, which is fine, of course. So it's not either or. It's not that Jesus either spoke Hebrew or Aramaic; he spoke both. And definitely, we see Hebrew wordplay frequently in the New Testament. Even though we have the English New Testament translated from the Greek, when you listen to the background culture, when you listen to the original language, you can definitely hear this Hebrew Aramaic wordplay coming through. And not just in the Gospels, in the writings of the Apostle Paul also. I look at some of that in our Hebrew verses lessons, for instance. But anyway, so this is interesting because basically we have the Hebrew word tafel, to be tasteless, or boring, you could maybe even say. And then we have the word for being seasoned, which is taval. So if salt has become tafel, with what will it be tavald? You can hear the word play here in the teachings of the master. Either you're one or the other. So anyways, it's like either you're spicy and flavorful, or you're tasteless and unseasoned, so to speak. So anyways, just to bring that home, I think this is a beautiful little example of how the Mishnah unlocks for us some of the wordplay in the teachings of Yeshua and the writings of the New Testament. So really, you can study some of these core texts of Judaism, and it can bring you closer to the Mashiach, to the Messiah, and it can help you to understand the core texts of Christianity better, if you're comparing the two, and if that's your desire. On a personal level, I just want to encourage you with that all. Like Yeshua basically was telling people, like, be spicy, like be flavorful. Don't lose your flavor. And the interesting thing here too, I mentioned to you about mixing. Did you notice that there? The word for taval here, to spice or to season something, is the sense of mixing. So, definitely we're all involved with society, and, we mix it up with our friends and people that we come in contact with, but don't get totally mixed up, so to speak. Don't get totally sucked into the mix. Don't lose your individuality. Don't lose that special pizzazz that makes you you. Stay that spicy version of you is something really that I think Yeshua was saying there. And so I hope that encourages you just to be yourself, to be happy about who you are, to be proud of who the Creator made you to be. Don't lose your spice. Don't lose your flavor. And because if you do, how are you going to get it back? It's like, definitely mix it up with people, but don't totally get mixed into the mix. All right, thanks for joining me in this little takeaway from our Mishnah Snapshots lesson. This is lesson 23 in our series. I'd love to have you just go over the whole lesson with me. Go to holylanguage.com. In the Learn section, you'll see our Mishnah Snapshots series. I'd love to have you join us there and learn with me. The whole lesson was really great. Like, this is one thing that we talked about. We talked about a bunch of other things also. There was a really neat concrete object lesson of a teaching in Ezekiel about the righteous person has to keep doing what's right, or it's not going to go very well for him at all. And we looked at an instance of the Torah and how there are different laws in the Mishnah. Some of them are recognized as being from the written Torah. Some of them are regarded as traditional law, and some of them are understood to be enactments of the scribes. So there's this urban legend out there that like Jewish people can't tell the difference between the written law and the oral law, and that's not actually true. If you actually study the oral law, the Mishnah, so to speak, you'll definitely see that. There's a reference to the Sikari, like the assassins, the dagger men in the Mishnah. We looked at that. We looked at some questions about whether a convert can say, the Hebrew prayers where it talks about, quote, our fathers. We talked about the New Testament and what the New Testament has to say about non-Jewish believers being grafted in, included in the Commonwealth of Israel. We looked at the Hebrew word for hermaphrodite and some interesting legal questions that come up in conjunction with that phenomenon. And we just looked at some other kind of trivial, entertaining things and some deep spiritual things. So anyways, I'd love to have you join me for the whole lesson. But in the meantime, just stay your spicy self, and thanks for joining me in this little snapshot of our Mishnah Snapshot lesson.